I'm going to deliver a few words before Dan comes up to give his message. Marcy, last week, one of your joys, your joy for the kindness of others who help you to navigate your environment as someone with mobility needs, resonated with me for a few reasons. First, Marcy, I'm here to tell you that your mobility needs provide countless opportunities for others to encounter God. As someone who has helped you carry something or open a door, I can tell you that the interactions are as much a blessing for me as they are for you. They prompt me to adjust to a more intentional pace, a consideration of others, and a consideration of my immediate environment. I come out of these interactions more connected to myself, others, and the world around me. So thank you. Second, it reminded me of why I continue to appreciate Winston-Salem Friends. This community is full of people who are authentic, inclusive, and uplifting. This is the first place of worship where I feel secure showing up as my authentic self in my soft pants, Crocs, mismatched socks, and fidget lanyard. July is Disability Pride Month. In a world which tends to measure value in terms of performance and outcomes, a lens change is offered during Disability Pride Month to highlight that all are wonderfully made in God's image and that God is in all of us. Having a physical, mental, intellectual, invisible, or sensory disability instills a perspective that quite literally has the power to shape a more inclusive, accessible, and compassionate world when we take the time to adjust our pace and listen with intention. If anything, having unique needs amplifies the potential for light to be found and shared. I have unique sensory and processing needs, which have been honored here, whether you've realized it or not. I take notes during monthly meetings so I can process what is said by reading it later. I have face blindness, which means that I struggle with discriminating between faces and consequently with attaching names and faces. Please do not take offense if I mix up your names. It is no reflection of my respect for you. I focus best when I feel grounded, which might look like me curled up in my seat or rocking. I hope that David knows I'm listening quite intently when I am rocking or fidgeting or not looking at you. I love that we are not expected to sit, stand, or sing on command, though anyone is welcome to if they feel so moved. We center and we share and we grow and we give. It is beautiful. This is my third time on Facing Bench partnering with Dan. Each of you have mentored me in Quakerly ways. Marcy has exuberantly shared her wisdom and invited my participation. David, Teague, and Judith have inspired and amused me with their messages and Facebook posts. And Dan has powerfully and discreetly mentored me through quiet encouragement, informative emails, and implicit trust in my inner voice. I could go on about all of you here, but believe it or not, I'm not that comfortable talking in front of people. Suffice it to say, I love and learn from the diversity of thought and expression this group provides. As you encounter others this week and month, I encourage you to continue to embrace the differences that you encounter. While adjusting your pace to meet someone else's needs, take the time to notice and appreciate the light that they are shining into the world. And now, Dan.
Thank you for that, Cindy. I wanted to thank Noelia. Oh, I'm sorry. Good?
Yeah.
I want to thank Noelia first because I know she played something that was that she really wanted to play, so thank you for that. And I wanted to thank Cindy for being my worship partner. We don't really communicate all that much. It's just kind of this intuitive thing. We trust each other that it's going to work, and it works. And so I really appreciate that. And the third thing is I really appreciate Jane coming. 2 years ago, we went to Italy, as some of you know, and the trip was really brutal. It was really tough. The locals weren't all that nice. The food was just so-so. There was a bully on the bus. Every place we went was just jam-packed, crowded. It was hot. And for all of that, I still have such fond memories of the people and of the company of my sister. So it's all about people and the company that you keep. So I know everybody, in addition to the Pride Month, we want to celebrate the Fête Française Nationale, which is 14 Juillet, which is a celebration of the Bastille Day, which is about unity and democracy, and we can't ever get too much of that, can we? This morning I'm going to talk a little bit about God's nature and that relationship with us. So most messages begin with a central theme, supported by fact, reason, feeling, or experienced, and often reinforced to establish that. Say what you're going to say, support what you say with fact or experience or sentiment, and then say what you just said. Now, for me, today's story is going to be a little different. For me today, one idea is going to lead to another, and that's going to lead to another. It's kind of like, it'll be a little like a scavenger hunt. And who doesn't love a scavenger hunt? And so we begin. The last time I spoke, I mentioned the college night spent with my roommates and this discussing the mysteries and wonders of life. And there was this other gentleman named Slim, which wasn't his real name, and he wasn't Slim. But Slim had a quiet way about him. He had a nice smile, and he looked like the Buddha. Now it was rumored that he was either a physicist or a CIA spook, or he was an agricultural expert, and I'm not talking about corn or wheat either. But I have no evidence to support that, only that I had a good feel about him. And he, out of the silence that night, he said to us, "Would you like to discover the story?" And none of us knew what that meant, but we said, okay, we'll go along. And he said, here are the only rules of the story. I will answer, you can only ask yes or no questions. I will either answer yes, I will answer no, or I'll answer maybe. So question after question, it took us from the prehistoric age to the land of the pharaohs, but some of our leadings were confusing. Is this a story about the Bible? Yes. Does it have to do with Jesus? No. Is this story about Bible prophecy? Maybe. On and on we traveled past feudal times. We went to the Renaissance and finally to modern times. From religion to art to politics, you name it, we talked about it. But then the night turned into morning and we were getting tired. And on cue, Slim sensed it. And he said, here's the secret of the story. Each story ending in a vowel was yes. Each story ending in a consonant was no. Each story ending in Y was maybe. Now, my roommates were a little bit miffed at all of this. They were a little upset, but I wasn't. I really liked it. I liked that there was some randomness to our process, and that the process was the whole point of discovering the story. Now, this idea of being okay with randomness and just because led me to re-examine two phrases that we associated with God a lot of times, and we've heard most of our lives. Perhaps we've even said them. Perhaps we've said them often. And here's the first. Imagine receiving some devastating news and a kindly soul with a sad smile and understanding eyes. Maybe they put their arm around you and they say this: everything happens for a reason. No. No, no, no. Everything does not happen for a reason. There is no reason to that.
Awesome.
And it's like the passage from Lao Tzu that I love so much. Tiger got to hunt, bird got to fly, man got to sit and wonder why. Tiger got to rest, bird got to land, woman got to tell herself she understands. We always just have to have a reason for something, don't we? I look at the world and the choices that we make, and it's amazing if there is any order or reason. Or our world. And here's the second phrase: God will never give us any more than we can handle. No, 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 no. Tell that to somebody in Ukraine, or Gaza, or Somalia, or Haiti. Tell it to the families dying of starvation. Tell it to the crossing of a border, of being kidnapped and trafficked. Tell it to the families of suicide victims. Tell it to those in this room that are dealing with things every day. No. Now, these widely used phrases associated with God, they led me somewhere, and they don't ring true. Does God use pain and suffering to provide divine reason? Is God administering a cosmic test? Does God keep piling on a world of woes just to make sure we can handle it? Well, these unsatisfactory distortions led me to explore the question: just what is the nature of God, and why is that important? For those of you who think this is not important, you'd be dead wrong. I'd strongly suggest that you read about the New Apostolic Reformation and this non-denomination's effort to conquer the seven mountains: politics, education, the media, the family, business, entertainment, and the church. And the Reformation's anointed chosen prophet to deliver this vision. The old dream of the priesthood of all believers has been replaced by armed prophets keen to replace the citadels of power from Satan and his minions. In other words, us. And to simplify, I'll simplify, there are two natures of God. There is God the punisher and God the merciful. The God of the Old Testament and the God of the New Testament. Now, before you accuse me of cherry picking, I'm going to tell you I'm in good company. Because pastors do it, priests do it, rabbis do it, imams do it, scholars do it, and so a lay person like me can do it too. Amen. Let's examine God the punisher, the omnipotent being that provides retribution for our actions, namely sin. Let's look at some of the stories. Adam and Eve. Adam gets a lifetime community service, and Eve, for a beautiful moment, she has to endure painful childbirth. That's not even the worst one. What to do about the wicked ways of human nature? Why, of course, destroy every living being and creature except for Noah, his family, and two of every kind. The Tower of Babel, no problem. Scatter the people and confuse their language. Abraham's faith needs testing. How about the sacrifice of his only son? Problem: Sodom and Gomorrah, a lot of evil. Solution: burn everything with raining sulfur. Lot's wife: molten salt. In Jeremiah, the people of Judah receives God's full wrath. The days are coming when they will call it the Valley of Slaughter, for they will bury the dead until there is no room. Their carcasses will become food for the birds and wild animals. I will bring an end to the sounds of joy. I will take away the harvest, declares the Lord. I will send venomous snakes among you. I will make Jerusalem a heap of ruins, a haunt of jackals, and I will lay waste the towns of Judah so no one can live there. Now, this is not a supernatural being that wants to get on the wrong side of it all. And make no mistake about this. This idea of God the Punisher resonates with all of us. Under trial, duress, and suffering, we ask ourselves, what did I do wrong? It's something that we learn. Or on the other hand, which one of us at some time or the other didn't want God to smite that other person? Just a little bit. Not a whole lot, just a little bit. And make no mistake, this punishing God is the God that some people really believe in and want to follow suit. But the God of the New Testament, really different. Here's the God who welcomes the sinner in the story of the prodigal son. Here's the God who lifts and cares for the untouchables in the Good Samaritan story. Even the untouchable is our neighbor. In the story of the workers in the vineyards, God is generous and fair, not just to one, but to all. In the parable of the lost sheep, the shepherd leaves the 99 to look for what? The one. And rejoices that the one returns to the fold. God's kingdom is like that of the mustard seed, the tiniest of all, and yet when it grows to be the largest. In short, God is accessible, generous, merciful, just, forgiving, and inviting all to the kingdom. Now, why is this important? Well, it defines our relationship with God, doesn't it? It defines our relationship with the world, and it defines our relationship with our neighbor, and it defines our mission in the world. And so, given that we believe that God is loving, generous, accessible, what would God have us be? Well, we know this to be true, that we are to act justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with God. Pretty simple. But it's a little bit more than that. There's a Sufi teaching that goes like this. Past the seeker as he prayed came the crippled and the beggar and the beaten. And seeing them, the seeker cried out, "Great God, how is it that a loving creator can see such things and yet do nothing about them?" And God said, "I did do something about it. I made you." Now, every day I spend an hour on Facebook. I guess Meta, is that what it is now? Every day I spend an hour on Facebook. This is the live edition. We used to call it Walking in the Neighborhood, but I'm calling it Facebook Live Edition. And I try to keep up with the times. Now, I meet all kind of really, really interesting people, and a lot of days there's some ministry going on. I can't exactly say what it is, but there is some ministry going on. There's my neighbor a couple of doors down, and he flies a Gadsden flag, and if you know what that is, it's one of these "don't tread on me" flags, one of the old ones with the snake. Well, we talk about his granddaughter a whole lot. That's pretty much all we talk, the weather and his granddaughter. There's Milo the lost cat, and this week a big old glossy picture of Milo got on the telephone poles. Now, I met Milo's owner one dark morning, and out of nowhere, this window opens up, and this lady said, "Have you seen Milo?" And she described Milo to me. And I said, "No, but I keep looking." And she'd send a postcard out to, I think, pretty much all the zip code. And lately we got this new poster. And I first met her around Thanksgiving. There's an Army Ranger who I know that I met in December, really an interesting person. Only thing different about him was he walks barefoot everywhere. And this was in December. Really interesting. Now, this last week, this just happened to me. There's this I heard, and I don't listen to, I don't wear earphones. Hearing's really important when you're walking, I think. I heard a really fast car, a speeding car coming on behind me. And so I turned and I gave him I guess you could call it kind of a salute. And you know what? I know this guy loved Jesus. because he honked his horn. He didn't toot his horn, but he honked it about 5 or 6 seconds. So I know this guy loves Jesus. Now, a couple of weeks ago, maybe a little bit longer, there was we were about 10 minutes from home, and it started to rain. It happens. And Bella and I, my little beagle, we were starting to feel a little sorry for ourselves because it was raining, and we still had a ways to go. And we're walking along, and because it's Facebook, I know this story, but here comes this woman out of her house. Now, this woman in the last 4 months, she lost her mother, she lost her husband, she lost her leg, and then the hospital that she worked for cut her loose after 25 years, and she had a computer job. And here she is in the rain, big old satchel slung over her shoulder, and in crutches, having to walk down 6 wooden slippery steps. And I felt something for her, and I said, you need some help? And she said, no, it's all good. And I was stunned by that. And here's another thing that makes it even more humbling to me. I know that most of these encounters that I have, these chances at ministry, wouldn't happen at all if I didn't have a little 30-pound bundle of happiness and joy walking with me every day. They wouldn't happen. It wouldn't be my glowing personality. And what would we have God be? Well, perhaps that much the same that God would ask of us. To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with each of us. And how is it just that we might relate with God? Well, before refrigerators, maybe one or two of you know this, but before refrigerators, people used ice houses to preserve their food. And so what you would do, you would have this small house, and in the winter, they would go to the lakes and cut blocks of ice out. And they would put ice all around the building, and then they would cover it all up with sawdust to maintain the coldness. And a lot of times the ice, it would stay cold all the way through summer. Well, anyway, one day, one gentleman that was using it, he lost his watch, pocket watch, and it was his most precious, valuable possession. It really was. He looked and he looked and he looked and he looked, and he couldn't find it. He asked his friends to help. They looked and looked and looked and couldn't find it. A brother and sister, about the age of Sage and Ollie, they said, maybe we can help. Now, of course, the older ones doing what they did, they didn't think much of it. They didn't think he'd be able to help. But sure enough, they went in the house, and in a couple of minutes, they came right back out. And there was the watch. We closed the door, the brother said, lay down in the sawdust, very, very still. The sister continued. We listened. Soon we heard the watch ticking. So the question really isn't, is God speaking, but whether we are being calm enough and still enough and quiet enough to hear that small, small voice of God. And now to say what I just said. Things happen, sometimes for no reason. God is merciful, God is just. God made us to take care of each other. If we are still and listen, God will speak to each of us. And so we move on.